Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Congregation Beth Judah's Transformative Tradition Tuesday study. And we're so glad that we're here together tonight. And I'd like to invite you to open the book of Revelation to chapter 1 as we continue our time together. We're doing a Messianic Jewish apocalyptic reading of the book of Revelation. All three of those words are important: Messianic, Jewish, and apocalyptic. And it's time for our world to come together. We've got so many things going on. Is there hope? Is there reason for us to look forward together? And sometimes we get lost in the details of what's happening around us. And the book of Revelation is designed to give us a big picture. And then it helps us know how to manage the details or the talk with the details. So I'm just excited to be here tonight. There's really this part of what we're doing in the book of Revelation I discovered 40 years ago as I was teaching college courses in Daniel and Revelation. This big picture concept that we're going to talk about tonight, we're really going to focus on this. This big picture concept of the book of Revelation puts everything else in perspective. And so my prayer is that this big picture concept tonight will be the thing that we focus on most in reading the Revelation. So that's why part 3 of our reading of the book of Revelation, as we continue to set the foundations, and tonight's the final session for setting foundations. This is why part 3 is entitled Our Motive for Reading the Revelation. Motive is everything when it comes to reading the Revelation. If we have a motive that is outside the big picture of the book of Revelation, then we can become focused on the details in such a way that really distracts us from the big picture altogether. So tonight, let's talk about our motive for reading the Revelation. And this is the introductory question that I have for us tonight. And if you are able to go onto our website, you can do that each week. There is a reading guide there. It guides us in our concepts. I know that in the brief amount of time that we have, that you will not have time to write down even the 10th of what we're going to talk about. So I hope this reading guide will help you along the way. And so the question that we ask at the very beginning tonight is this: what is your motive for asking God to reveal anything to you about the whole universe, your generation, or you personally? The word motive relates to why we want to do something, the motivator. The word motive is the why I want to read the book of Revelation. So what is our motive? When we come to asking God to reveal anything to us, it's always good to ask why we're asking that. Why are we asking this of you, Adonai? And so what is your motive for asking God to reveal anything? Let's start with the whole universe. What do we want God to reveal to us about the whole universe? What is our motive for that? What about your generation? What is our motive for asking God to reveal things to us about our generation? And what is our motive for asking God to reveal anything about me, about my life, about what I have or what I do or where I'm going? So it's good for us to step back as we now, next session, approach reading a lot more of the Revelation. These first 3 foundation sessions are very important. And I don't think there's anyone any more important than what we're talking about tonight. Why is one's motive for revelation important? So let's keep the word motive in front of us tonight. There are some foundations that we have set in the first 2 sessions that we want to keep with us tonight. And I have set these aside in a block in the reading guide. Always good to get a sip of tea. I've set these aside in the reading guide because we're going to refer to these very quickly every time we have a session. Sometimes we do introductory things in any kind of a study that are really foundational. We have to keep these things right in front of us, but they get kind of lost once we get a few weeks into it. These foundations we're going to review very quickly every session. First of all, in the series foundations, number one, the main point, the series main point. The revelation is, we need to know what it is. The revelation is a Jewish apocalyptic genre, that is literary type, intended to do three things: inspire one's hope, call one's commitment, encourage one's worship. How? Through the victory of Yeshua, the Messiah. The key concept that we're going to be looking at when it comes to revelation, the word revelation that we are using in English, the word revelation is translated, it comes from a Greek word apocalypsis. Well, let me just say the word apocalyptic that we use in English is very closely related to the Greek word apocalypsis, even though it's a late Greek word. But both of these words, revelation and apocalyptic, they translate a Hebrew root, galah, and it means to uncover what is hidden in plain view. So the purpose of the book of Revelation, if we understand apocalypse, the book of Revelation intends to uncover what is hidden from plain view. It's all real, yet it is hidden in some way from plain view. And then the apocalypse is who reveals it. And we did a very close study last week about, in tradition, it is God who reveals. And that's why, that's the value of our key word, our key verse, rather. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 28, because Yeshua taught us to continue reading the Torah and teaching the Torah, the things of the Torah. And chapter 29, verse 28 really gives us the Hebrew understanding of Revelation, the reason for the book of Revelation, chapter 29, verse 28. There are English versions that number this as verse 29, but in Hebrew Bibles, it's chapter 29, verse 28. And it says, the secret things belong to Adonai our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever. Why? Motive. In order to do all the words of this Torah. So the secret things belong to God. He understands everything that is secret and everything that is hidden. And then God reveals certain things. That's what the book of Revelation is. God is revealing these things, yet in the genre, literary type of apocalyptic, he is revealing them through signs and symbols that the people reading it understand, but the people outside the people reading it do not understand. It keeps them safer. Let's say that the people who do not understand these things might threaten the people who are reading it. So it's very important for us to understand that originally the Jews and people who are familiar with the Jewish scriptures and Jewish understandings of things, they understood the things that we are reading in the book of Revelation and knew what they related to when it comes to a life with God. Now, there's something also important here. The things revealed belong to us and to our children forever. As I mentioned in session 2, I'm sitting around the table where our family has sat for so many times of discussion. When we were talking about where in the house to set this up as we continue coming from our home to your home, one of the suggestions from one of my daughters is, let's do it at the table. It's where we've had the best discussions and the best study with our Bibles. And so we're here tonight continuing to move on in our study. So welcome. From time to time, my family members will be here in these chairs and we may have a discussion as we move forward together. I hope that you can bring people around your table wherever you are. So open your Bibles, just put me on a screen at the end of the table, whether it's live as it is now or whether it's archived later. Just put me at the end of your table and gather some folks around and let's read this study, and then you can create your own questions as well. Now, the thing that we're to teach our children as we sit around the table and discuss this is in order to do all of the words of this Torah. Yeshua taught us to continue studying the Torah. Don't unhitch it. Don't push it behind. It is the Torah has the revelation that the book of Revelation communicates in signs and symbols to those who are believing. Those who read and know these signs and symbols in the book of Revelation, as the Jewish people did, they're going to be inspired in their hope. They're going to be called to their commitment, and they're going to be encouraged in their worship. And so we come now to understand why the revelation is. Now, here's the key approach that we will have every time we get together. Our reading of Revelation as a Messianic Jewish apocalypse has a threefold interpretive approach. It'll be Jewish apocalyptic, it will be Messianic, and it will be multi-generational, multicultural, multi-personal, because it is a revelation that's intended to inspire, call, and encourage throughout every generation. So we'll always take this interpretive approach. We're not going to cut the book of Revelation off from what it was originally intended to do. We're also going to have a threefold purpose and application, and I just mentioned those as well. We're going to read it and apply it for three reasons: to inspire hope, to call to commitment, and to encourage worship. This is what the revelation is all about. I want to make a very important note here. Our course is not a comprehensive exegetical verse study, though we use foundational exegetical elements. Exegesis means to go to the text and draw out what's in the text. It does not mean to take what you think it believes and read it into it. So we're going to have some foundational exegetical skills going on here, but our reading is to approach and apply the things that we're able to do within our limited time in each session. But further questions, and I'm going to have a part at the end where you write that, further questions will be answered in personal exegetical skills in study. And my desire is, as we go along, we will learn how to use the tools of biblical study that draws out what the Bible itself says, rather than try to tell the Bible what it means. The Bible will tell us what it means, and we can apply it then to our daily lives. So we've done our good brief introduction, and let's go now into the study of the Revelation. Let's go to Revelation chapter 1 as we begin tonight. Our motive is the focus. Our motive is the focus. That's what we're focusing on tonight. So what is our motive for reading the book of Revelation? Is the motive to understand all the details? Is it to understand every symbol? Is the motive to be able to argue with someone about the timeline of the book of Revelation? Is our motive something that is not the original motive, the big picture motive of the book of Revelation at all? So we need to be clear on our motive for reading the Revelation. If reading the Revelation is to be able to argue eschatology and timelines and who is who and what is what, then that's not the primary motive that the author had for writing the Revelation. We're going to discover that tonight. So let's jump into that now. Here's the main point for tonight then. Part 3, main point. Our motive for reading Revelation is to reach a harvest of thirsty people. This is going to come from our reading tonight. Our motive for reading Revelation is to reach a harvest of thirsty people, of whom we all are and have been. So that's the motive, very clearly. Now, that's not something I wanted the book of Revelation to say. It's not something that I chose some word. We're going actually to see what the book of Revelation says that brings us to understanding that the motive of the revelation is to reach people who are thirsty and to inspire their hope, to call them to commitment, and to encourage their worship. Let's go with the first point then, as we set one more time this foundation that we're looking at tonight. So let's go to Revelation chapter 1, because there's something very important about the apocalypse here. Number 1 on the reading guide says, our motive arises when we see the beginning and the end before we begin. It's worth reading a little bit slowly. Our motive for reading Revelation arises when we see the beginning of the book of Revelation and the end of the book of Revelation before we begin. Now, how many of you go to the last page or two of a book when you read it? You know, it may not be the thing to do if you're reading a murder mystery, but very often I'll read the beginning part of a book and I'll read the very last end of a book. I don't read a lot of fiction. I read a lot of nonfiction and research. So sometimes it helps me to know where we're going in the beginning and then see how that happens at the end. That's the way we approach the book of Revelation tonight. So let's read Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Again, we're reading tonight, so I want you to have a Bible when you are able, and as we read together. So let's read Revelation 1 through 3 for our final foundational course. And these are the introductory verses, and they actually have helped us set the foundations for the way we study. The revelation of Yeshua the Messiah, which God gave him to show to his servants the things that must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testified to the word of God and to the testimony of Yeshua the Messiah to everything he saw. How fortunate or how blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy and those who hear and keep what has been written in it, for the time is near, or as we drew off Apocalyptic last week, for it can happen quickly. Let's look at the main concepts in these introductory verses for just a moment. The revelation, of course, that's important, and Yeshua is there. But there are some things that he says, some words that he uses. He uses the word soon. We go on in verse 1, and he talks about his messenger, his angelos in Greek, or his shaliach in Hebrew. But he uses a messenger in this revelation. He testified. Testimony is very important here. And in fact, the messenger, John, testified and to the testimony of Yeshua the Messiah. So Yeshua himself has a testimony. And then this very last verse, I want us to focus on this. It's very important. Verse 3, how fortunate or how blessed, makarios will be the word here. How blessed is the same word that's used in Yeshua's Sermon on the Mount. How blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy, and those who hear There's a really important word. Let's hold on to that tonight. Those who hear and keep what has been written in it, for the time is near. It can happen quickly. So that's the beginning. Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, with its main concepts. These are the introductory verses of the Revelation. Now let's go to the end, because our motive arises when we see the beginning and the end before we begin. And this is so important to us. Let's go to Revelation chapter 22, the very ending chapter. And there's a large section here that is a conclusion, but I'll have a note on that in just a moment. Okay, let's recall the beginning that we just read in Revelation 1, 1 through 3. Now let's go to Revelation chapter 22, verses 6 and 7, because now this is the beginning of the ending, I guess we could say. Chapter 22, verse 6. These words are trustworthy and true. Adonai, the God of the spirits of the prophets, has sent his angel to show his servants what must happen soon. Behold, I am coming soon. How fortunate is the one who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book. That is almost exactly like the beginning. The beginning has these main concepts. The end has the same concepts. And there's one verse which is nearly a quote of the first verse in chapter 1. The main concepts are the same. He talks about the messenger, the angelos, or the shaliach from Hebrew. He talks about a messenger. He talks about things that can happen quickly, things that may happen soon. And he says, behold, I am coming soon. And then he draws attention again to this very almost same verse. How blessed is the one who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book. This has something to do with our calling, our motive for reading the Revelation. 1.3 on the reading guide gives us a little exercise. Connect similar main concepts with the purpose. We talked about those concepts. There's a messenger. There are things that can happen quickly. It has to do with a testimony. There's blessing. How blessed is the one who keeps the words of this prophecy. And then the important thing that really comes across is that it's about Yeshua. It's about Yeshua. So this says something about our calling in reading the book of Revelation. It says something about our motive in reading the book of Revelation. We are to be messengers. It's about being a messenger. It's about being alert. It's about the blessings that God has for us. It's about focusing on the words that he has here, because these words themselves have a message. So how do we connect these similar main concepts with the purpose to call one's commitment? Do you remember the three purposes and applications of the book of Revelation? To inspire one's hope, to call one's commitment, and to encourage one's worship. Each of the first three letters form the word ice. So let's ice this tonight. Let's ice this. Let's make sure we always keep these three purposes and applications with us as we read all the way through the Revelation. Inspire one's hope, call one's commitment, and encourage one's worship. All three of those must come together. And in this one specifically, how do the things that we read at the beginning and that are also at the end, how do they call our commitment? What do they say about the motive of reading the Revelation? It doesn't mean that we cannot have other motives, but we really must make sure that the primary motive of the book of Revelation itself is what brings fulfillment to our other motives as well. So how does this look in our reading guide, number 1.4? How does this look at the beginning, at the end, add to your motive for reading the Revelation? I don't think any of our motives are in error. If it's we want to understand the signs, we want to understand the symbols, we want to understand what may happen and when it may happen, all of those motives are very, very good. Yet the primary motive must be that we are to reach a harvest, that the purpose of the revelation is to reach a harvest of thirsty people, of whom each of us is one. What are you thirsty for tonight? What were you thirsty for when you came to seek God? And then what were you thirsty for when you came to trust in Yeshua as Messiah? What are the thirsts that you've had all through your life that continue? God cares about thirsty people. He cares about you. He cares about me. He cares about the people sitting in the chairs around our table and in our synagogue. God cares about thirsty people. How does this add to your motive for revelation? Keep those motives, the reason that you're watching this tonight, but may this primary motive of the book of Revelation add to, in fact, be the fulfilling and upholding of God's care and God's love for thirsty people. So our motive arises when we see the beginning and we see the end before we begin. The book of Revelation is to reach a harvest of thirsty people like you and me. The things that we're called, that he calls someone to do in the beginning, the thing that happens in the beginning when he calls that servant in Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, are the very same commitments that happen at the end of the book of Revelation. Isn't that a wonderful start? Well, let's continue now in the end of the book of Revelation, because the things that are being said here are leading us to a very important word that will occur again and again and again and again and again and again and again when the messenger speaks to the 7 communities of the Messiah. This word perhaps is the most important word aside from Yeshua himself. This word becomes the most important word in the book of Revelation. Let's go to Revelation chapter 22 in verse 17. Chapter 22 in verse 17. Now, all those middle verses between verse 7 and verse 17, those have a lot of details that also relate to details in chapter 1 of the book of Revelation. But there are a lot of details there. What we're talking about tonight is the primary motive. So we will connect the details in Revelation chapter 1 to the details in Revelation chapter 22, verses 7 through 16. We'll do that next week. We're going to get into details next week. Tonight, we're focusing on the primary motive. This defines everything about the book of Revelation. Let's look at Revelation chapter 22, verse 17. Would it be okay if I set my Boston Red Sox cup on the table? Would that offend anybody? I want you to know that the person who bought me this cup is a New York Yankees fan. And so this is a symbol of love from him to me. Wait, does this mean I'm going to have to buy him a Yankees cup? I got to think about that for a little bit. Let's come to the most important point, however. Revelation chapter 22, verse 17. The Ruach and the bride say, come. And let the one who hears say, come. Let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who wishes freely take the water of life. What do you think is a key word here? Here. H-E-A-R is the most important word here. H-E-R-E. Now, let's go back for just a moment again to chapter 1, verse 3, because this word is the commitment that is called for at the very introduction. He says, how blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy. That's what we're doing. We're reading it. And those who hear, those who hear. The primary concept or commitment that connects the beginning of the revelation with the end of the revelation is the word hear. This word is going to arise again and again and again throughout the book of Revelation. In fact, once we do some details about Yeshua in chapter 1 and who he is and those kinds of things, which also connect with the last chapter of Revelation 22, we'll jump right into the messages to the 7 communities. And over again, I bet you're already quoting this verse. He says, let him who hears hear what the Spirit is saying to the congregations. Let him who hears what? What is the Spirit saying? Let's go to this verse 17. So what one word does the one who hears say? In Revelation 22:17, what one word does the one who hears say? Let's look at it. The Ruach and the bride say, come. The Ruach is saying, come. And then, as we'll learn a little bit later, now the bride says, come. So the Spirit is saying, come to the people of the communities and the people of the world. And then the bride of Messiah learns to say, come. And then the person like you and me who now hears what the Spirit and the bride are saying, let the one who hears say, come. You and I, when we hear what God is saying in the book of Revelation, we are going to look at the world around us and we are going to say, come. Let's go to the second part of this. Let's read Revelation 22:17 again, but let's look for another word. What one word describes the one who comes? What one word describes the one who comes? The second part of chapter 22, verse 17 says, let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who wishes take freely take the water of life. Father, may your Spirit enable us to receive the importance of this word. Father, Spirit, word. May we hear clearly that we say, come to the person that is thirsty. We say, come to the person that is thirsty. Our motive becomes the motive of the book of Revelation. The motive of the book of Revelation is to bring hope and encouragement to thirsty people. That's why we're reading it. We will not understand all the details and all the concepts. We will not understand the timelines. There are people who spend 90% of their time trying to figure out the timelines and trying to figure out who is who and what is what and when is when. And those are good and those are important. But the desire to reach thirsty people with the good news of Yeshua is the primary motive of the book of Revelation. It's an apocalyptic book. When he says one who hears, the book of Revelation may be the closest to the Dead Sea Scrolls of any book that we have in the entire New Covenant writings. The Dead Sea Scrolls, which were from an apocalyptic group that lived in a community called Qumran, that they were disgusted with the things that were going on at the temple in Jerusalem. They were disgusted with people who were distracted by all the other details and things of life and religion and politics. And so they came apart in a community called Qumran to do one thing, to find out what God is revealing to the world. And their writings are so very, very similar to the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is an apocalyptic book that was very much like other writings in the Jewish world in that day. But not only is it apocalyptic, remember our interpretive guides, it's also Jewish. What did we just read? Let the one who hears say, come. Let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who wishes freely take from the water of life. Any Jewish person who is listening to this, any Jewish person would remember Isaiah 55, which says, who is a prophet, who says, everyone who thirsts, come to the water, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why do you spend money on what is not bread, your wages on what does not satisfy? Listen diligent to me and eat what is good and delight yourself in abundance. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen so that your soul may live. How? I will make an everlasting covenant with you, the trustworthy loyalty to David. Behold, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and a commander for the peoples. Behold, you will summon a nation you do not know, and a nation that did not know you will run to you because of Adonai your God and the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you, this one of David. Verse 6, seek Adonai while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way and the unrighteous one his thoughts. Let him return to Adonai so he may have compassion on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. The Revelation is an apocalyptic book. The Revelation is a Jewish book. And oh, how the Revelation is a Messianic book. In Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 to 38 are some of the most messianic verses in all of the Bibles. In all of the Bible, we only have one. Matthew chapter 9, verse 38 gives us Yeshua's commitment. It says, now Yeshua was going around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues. The first thing is teaching, and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every kind of disease and sickness. thirsty people. And when he saw the crowds, he felt compassion, compassion, compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore pray. Therefore pray. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he may send out workers into his harvest field. How does this connect with Revelation's purpose to inspire one's hope? Do you remember the first time that you heard a message about Yeshua that made you hope? How thirsty you were and are still. And then you heard that message that was like water. Let the one who is thirsty come. And the one who has no money, let him take freely from the water of life. How do these two concepts of hearing and thirst, how do they connect with Revelation's purpose to inspire one's hope, breathe hope into you and into people? And how does this look at the beginning and the end? Again, how does this add to your motive for Revelation? This is going to be a very emotional, experiential, and exciting reading of the book of Revelation. But it's not created by our emotion or by our experience or by our excitement. The Word of God itself calls us to hear that God loves thirsty people like you and me. Now, as we come to the end now and we prepare to close and pray, there is a key to remember that we'll always have at the end of the Revelation, because it helps us to be multi-generational and multicultural and multi-personal with a book, with a letter that is intended to speak across all generations. And the main point and purpose of Revelation, to inspire, call, and encourage, ice it. As a Messianic Jewish apocalypse, these things have been happening, they are happening, and they will continue to happen until the coming of Messiah and the inauguration of the Messiah's kingdom. We will see increasing waves of the realities of the book of Revelation until that last time. These waves are going to increase in intensity, and they're going to increase in purpose. The words spoken in the book of Revelation are going to become more inspiring to people who need hope. They're going to be more encouraging to one who wants to worship. And they're going to be more purposeful for the one who seeks commitment. Committing oneself to something is not the problem. It's having a purpose to commit oneself to. And God is committed to reaching a harvest of thirsty people. What wave arises from this reading for Messiah's community? We are the ones who hear, and we are the ones who eventually will say to the world, come. What wave arises from this reading? May it be a compassion for thirsty people in a world where very little makes sense, in a world where there is pain, in a world where there is harassment and helplessness because they have no shepherd. May we pray tonight for compassion for thirsty people. That's what will send workers into the harvest. After we finish tonight, we will post a link to a song by Joshua Aaron. And the title of the song is The Spirit and the Bride. The Spirit and the Bride. It relates so much to the verses that we're talking about tonight. Joshua Aaron now lives in Israel, but not in any place in Israel, around the Galilee. Joshua has a Jewish mother and a sovereign of Israel. And Joshua has felt the call as one who believes in Yeshua to connect with the Jewish people of the land. What's really amazing here is that in this video that you will see on the Spirit and the Bride, there are many with lyrics. I want you to have the link that gets to the one with the video, because he's overlooking the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is where Yeshua started his ministry. The Sea of Galilee is where he learned about his people. And then he would go up year after year to the very religious place of Jerusalem. But then he always came back down the mountain to be with the people of the land. May that video encourage your worship tonight. Worship with the one who knows how thirsty you were and how thirsty you are. May you know that as a father has compassion on his children, so Adonai has compassion on those who love him. And may we begin to fulfill the purpose of the book of Revelation. And just as Yeshua said to you and me, come, may we have our thirsty souls quenched. And then may we look to the world of harvest of thirsty souls themselves. So continue to write down your interpretive and exegetical questions as we go along. We'll learn the skills to answer those. And then next week, we're going to have more details of Revelation chapter 1. But those details will follow the motive that we have tonight. I'd like to pray for you. Avinu, thank you for loving us. As a father has compassion on his children, so you have compassion on us tonight. Thank you that when we were thirsty for a shepherd, you brought us the good news of Messiah Yeshua. And now we hear your words. We hear them. Intently we listen to them. You will give us confidence that will inspire our hope and call our commitment and encourage our worship. Oh, how worship becomes a part of the revelation. Thank you for this night of reading. Thank you for these foundation sessions. And now we're ready to go forward. In the name of Yeshua, our merit for eternal life. Amen and amen. May Hashem bless you. Shalom.